I'm Kaylina Mills, and you're listening to the first official episode of 123 All Ears on Me. To kickstart the show, we're going to hear more about a hot button topic in the early childhood field here in Maine, the Quality Rating and Improvement System. Our Quality Rating and Improvement System is referred to as QRIS. It's an acronym. In Maine, we've had a QRIS called Quality for Me since 2008. Earlier this year, the state launched the new QRIS system, which is now called Rising Stars. In this episode, we will hear from Jen Wiles, the statewide communications coordinator at Maine Roads to Quality Professional Development Network, who is supporting programs as they transition to Rising Stars across the state. We will also hear from some local child care program directors to see what their thoughts are on the new Rising Star program. When we return, we'll hear more about what a QRIS is and what it's for.
Are you thinking about going back to school to get your early childhood education degree? Maine AEYC and the Office of Child and Family Services wants to make it happen for you. We are proud to facilitate the Teach Scholarship Program so that early childhood educators throughout the state can go back to school to get their associate or bachelor's degree with most expenses covered.
The Teach program is unique because it's a partnership between you, Maine AEYC, and your employer. Together, we all work to ensure that you can successfully meet your career and educational goals. If you get a Teach scholarship, Maine AEYC pays for 85% of your tuition costs, your employer pays for 7.5%, and you are only responsible for the remaining 7.5% of your tuition cost. For those seeking their associate degree, that's an average of only $260 per year that you must pay out of pocket.
Exactly, Tony. You can get your degree through the Teach Scholarship Program for very little money and without having to take out loans. It's such a phenomenal program to support early childhood educators throughout Maine. In addition to funding your tuition, Teach recipients are paid for 2 hours a week of release time so that they can study without losing pay from work or time from their families. The scholarship provides a stipend each term, and the scholarship pays for 85% of your book costs. The scholarship provides so much to its recipients.
And in addition to all of those benefits, Teach Scholarship recipients get one-on-one counseling and support from a Maine AEYC staff member to ensure that they can successfully complete their program.
It's so simple to apply for a Teach Scholarship. Go to maineayc.org/application and download the application to your computer. After that, it should only take about 30 minutes to fill out the form and apply.
Again, that's maineayc.org/application. maineayc.org/application. Apply for a Teach scholarship today and get back into the classroom to get your degree.
Now I have with me Jen Wiles, the Early Childhood Quality Improvement Systems Coordinator for the Maine Roads to Quality Professional Development Network. The acronym we use to refer to that big long title is MRTQ, which stands for Maine Roads to Quality. So Jen, can you give us an overview of what Rising Stars and a quality rating improvement system is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a quality rating and improvement system is based on national research that is helping early childhood programs to uh, view nationally evidence-based, recognized indicators of quality. So it's a way for programs to be recognized for the quality care that they're already providing, while also giving them a roadmap to here's what research says high quality programs look like. So that's just a general overview of a QRIS. In Maine, we have our very own quality rating and improvement system called Rising Stars for Me, which is new starting at the end of March of 2023. Folks would have known it by its original name, Quality for Me, that we rolled out in 2008. So our system in Maine, Rising Stars for Me, we have 8 standard areas that break down different components of an early childhood program. Everything from developmentally appropriate practice to staffing to engaging with families. In the new Rising Stars, we've added an additional standard on health, safety, physical activity, and nutrition. So that's very exciting for us to have that in the mix now as well. And what we ask programs to do is fill out an online application, rate themselves using the requirements within the standards. Um, we also use administratively linked data from the Maine Roads to Quality Registry. So those would be things like levels on the career lattice and training. And then at the end, the program gets an overall rating. So that's just a general overview of what the system is. The other big piece of it is that the ratings for programs and their information about Rising Stars are now displayed on childcarechoices.me, which is our state's childcare search website for families looking for childcare. So this is also, we are also really being intentional about bringing families in to the mix with our new and improved quality rating and improvement system.
And so, are other states' quality rating and improvement systems similar to ours?
There is such a wide array of what states are doing across the country. At this point, most states do have some version of a QRIS. Most of them are statewide, but a few states still have like regional QRIS systems. Like Florida and California have a couple of regional ones, and so they're doing everything from just very limited QRIS systems that only involve like centers or Head Start or like really big programs. And there are others that, like Louisiana, rates every single kind of program in their state, including public schools. They're using things like class, environmental rating scales. So it's super comprehensive and really birthed through the end of high school. So that's just kind of a picture of the wide array of what states are doing nationally. There is a great resource called the Build Initiative that has some great webinars about national trends in quality rating and improvement, and all kinds of issues related to early childhood policy. And then if you want to get really geeky, there's the QRIS Compendium.org website that really you can do a search of what's going on nationally.
Okay. So, ours is kind of leaning more towards the comprehensive side, but not quite at that level of like Louisiana's, for example.
Yeah, so I would say where Maine really diverges from the national trends is that we are including everyone. Right. So we have now all license programs are required to join QRIS, and also license exempt non relative programs. So we have folks who are providing care for one or two children and receiving child care subsidy dollars. They're included. Municipal rec programs that are not required to be licensed are also included. So as far as the last couple of national webinars I've attended, Maine is really the only one of the only, if not the only state that does that. So
Okay.
we are always leading the way.
Always. Dirigo, right?
Hmm.
So you talked about how there was a QRIS system that was started in 2008. This year in 2023, we started a new rating system. So can you tell me more about how the new rating system, Rising Stars, was created?
Sure, yeah. It's was a long history with quality for me, so I will consolidate it in that we rolled it out in 2008. And then for the next few years, the state did what is called a validation study, where we had trained researchers going into programs, using tools, the environmental rating scales to rate programs, with the end goal being to see, like, using an objective evidence based tool, does our system actually reflect differences in quality in real life? And we found that studies show that yes, there are significant differences between what was a step one and a step four program. It was a little bit less delineated at steps 2 and 3, but we did have our system was validated. So that was good, but we also learned a lot along the way. Then in 2013, 2014, the state was looking to update the system. I mean, obviously, research is always changing. We want to be as current as possible. So they commissioned a study with some of our partners here at the University of Maine to do more research, to do focus groups, to have an advisory committee to see what was working well with Quality for Me and what we could change and where the field is going. So that brought in tons and tons of stakeholders, parents, partners, programs of all different types. We had regular meetings for a couple of years. All of that work produced 2 reports that are available, I believe, on the OCFS website.
Jargon alert! Jen just said OCFS. If you're not sure what that acronym means, you're not alone. OCFS stands for the Office of Family and Child Services, which is an office in the Department of Health and Human Safety at the state level.
So all of that information, once we kind of gathered all of that. It did sit for a little bit. And then we kind of, when the Mills administration came in, there was a renewed interest in rolling out those changes. So 2020, 2019, 2020, we really got that system, the new system buffed up and ready to roll out. So that is where that are available, I believe, on the OCFS website. From the validation study, from all those years of Quality for Me, the intensive study of that revision team, then looking forward to 2020 and onward, where the field had been going. So
To summarize what I'm hearing, to make sure that I'm understanding
sure,
correctly,
yeah.
you did the validation study to see how the original system was working. You found that it was working, but there were some areas for improvement. And so you brought stakeholders together, and from that created 2 reports on how the system could be improved.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And what do you see as the major changes between the old system and the new Rising Stars system?
Sure. So the biggest difference is obviously we've got a new name. Part of that came from the confusion between Maine Roads to Quality, Quality for Me. There was a lot of confusion that that was the same organization and we're not the same. So our new name, Rising Stars for Me. The next big change is that we went from a 4-step program to a 5-star program. That was based on feedback from the revision studies, those papers that we put out, is that the stars were just a more generally recognizable system for families. It also is a little bit, it's visual, right? So you can see what a star rating is. And then also we were having confusion again because there's the Maine Roads to Quality Registry has career lattices that have levels. So it was a confusion between levels and steps. So we moved to the 5-star system. We're bringing in those license exempt programs that I mentioned before. So everyone is included in the system. And then the big practical thing that programs will see is that we are doing everything online now. There's no requirement for programs to keep a paper portfolio. They will upload all of their documentation or links to their documentation into their e-portfolio within the application. And then I know our friends at the Office of Child and Family Services will talk about the on-site monitoring piece a lot more. But that was originally part of Quality for Me. There wasn't staffing to really do it for many years, but we are bringing that back. So when a site visit is done, there will be like spot checks of different documentation, but you won't have to have that big paper portfolio anymore. So
Okay.
those are the big ones.
Is there support for programs? Like some programs might not have Wi-Fi access in more remote parts of Maine, or might not just be as tech savvy. the people running the programs. So is there support for people to do that online system, or can they still do a paper portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we, between MRTQ PDN and our friends at the Office of Child and Family Services, we have many folks who are willing to help programs with any type of issue, whether it's technology or bugs in the system, questions about anything. But if a program is really struggling with the technical aspects, just have them give us a call. We don't want that to be a barrier for them. So I think our approach to that will really be individualized to what each program needs, but it should not be lack of access to Wi-Fi or challenges with technology should not be a barrier, and we're more than happy to help.
Okay. That's good to know. I'm sure there are educators listening who are excited about that.
Yes.
What do you think is most important for those educators in Maine to know about Rising Stars right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think in general, change is hard, right? Like a lot has happened over the past few years. Folks are burnt out. There are challenges in this field that we've had for years that are really peaking as a result of the pandemic and many other things. So we understand that. Like, I want to make sure that folks understand that we are feeling that. We want folks to think of Rising Stars for Me as a support for the field, not as pushing down more regulation and more requirement, right? So we are asking programs to go in to do the application, to take a look around at what the standards are asking for. But if your program doesn't feel ready, you can just click through the application and get a rating of a star 2 and have met your obligation for licensing. We don't want it to be a burden for you. For those programs who were heavily engaged with Quality for Me or who feel ready to be engaged with Rising Stars for Me, we hope that you see it as an opportunity for your program to have some a framework for continuous quality improvement for your program. So we're looking for programs to think about things like what curriculum are you using? Um, how do you articulate that to families? We're asking them to think about ongoing evaluation using family surveys, using staff surveys if you have staff, thinking about inclusive practices. We have a whole new tool called the Rising Stars for Me Inclusive Practices Checklist. There are a ton of supports we have around using that tool. Even though we have the standards and we call them requirements, they're meant to be open ended so that programs can set the goals and work on things that are meaningful for them and for their staff, for the children, and for the families.
Hmm. So you're saying if they're not ready to engage, they could just go through and check no on all the questions and they'd still be a star 2?
That's right. That's right. Yep.
So then I'm curious, what is the difference between like a 1-star program and a 2-star program?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. So, our Star One programs are those license exempt programs receiving childcare subsidy program funding. So, if you are a non relative, say you're the neighbor across the street, you're taking one or two children, and the family receives subsidy, you are a Star One. And that's just by virtue of meeting the requirements to receive childcare subsidy program. I just want to make that clear is that Star One programs are unlicensed. If you are not licensed but meet the requirements for childcare subsidy, you join the system at a Star One. You don't have to fill out the application. Those folks don't have to fill out an application, but they also can't move up the system until they become licensed. Right. So your municipal rec programs, like I live in Portland, the Portland rec programs take childcare subsidy, so they come in at a Star One.
Okay,
Okay. So anybody who's licensed is a Star Two.
gotcha.
Baseline licensed, you are a Star Two. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I was curious, like if you basically just have to check no on everything, how does that make you a star 2 already? But that makes sense that it's the licensing.
Yes. Yeah, and that was part of the design of the system is important. It was very important for the state to include those license exempt programs in the system. So just by the virtue of being licensed, you get that extra star.
Cool. So, what about programs who were at the higher rating in the old system? They were at step 3 or step 4. I know there are some benefits that they received. I think, didn't they get like a higher subsidy reimbursement?
Yes. Yeah, so there are incentives for programs to move up and to maintain higher ratings. One of those incentives is an increase in the subsidy payment. They call it a quality bump. So, additional payment for those programs that are maintaining a higher rating.
Okay. So, if you were at a step 3 or 4, you don't automatically transition to a star 3 or 4 in the new system, correct?
So, another great question. So, when we did the transition, and I'm talking like the little elves in the computer that did the transition at the end of March. What we had to do so that we wouldn't have a system, so we wouldn't be running two different systems at the same time. Right, totally confusing. Is we migrated everyone from Quality for Me to Rising Stars for Me. So that meant that your whatever your rating was on March 26th, when the little elves started their work, you got moved up one rating for your to reflect your Rising Stars for Me rating. So all step 1 programs became star 2. All step 2 programs became star 3. So we did that so that it was just a clean transition. We're only running one system. Everybody gets in there that we didn't have like 2,000 people trying to fill out the application all at one time. Um, so that happened. Folks should have received a new paper certificate in the mail from OCFS. If they didn't get one, they can reach out to Amber, and I will let her talk about that when you talk to them about the certificate pieces. And then we're coming to the end of what we're calling the grace period right now, which is the end of September, September 29th. Um, so anybody who had an expiration date between the end of March and the end of September, they were given this grace period of 6 months, and their expiration date was bumped to the end of September. And when I say expiration date, in the new system, expiration dates for the QRIS for Rising Stars for Me align with license expiration dates. So you'll have to renew in the system every 2 years, and it will align with your licensing date. So that is a bit of a change as well. But if a program expired within the past 6 months, they will have to go in by the end of September and do the application to get their updated rating.
Fact check. So, this episode was filmed in mid September before the end of that quote unquote grace period that Jen is referring to. Since Jen and I spoke, OCFS and MRTQ have given an extension on the grace period until November 1st. So, if your license expired between March 27th, 2023, and October 31st, 2023, now you have until November 1st to get into the new QRIS system and submit that application.
If your license doesn't expire until 2024, you have until 2024 to go in and do the application. To summarize, we moved everybody, gave everybody a bump up to what their new rating would be in Rising Stars for Me. And now, as we work through folks' expiration dates, they'll have to go in as that date approaches and do the application to officially apply and get a rating with Rising Stars for Me. Yes, there was an online application for Quality for Me as well. There wasn't any uploading of documentation. Again, that was that paper portfolio. Quality for Me had expiration dates every 3 years. So now they're going to be a little bit more frequent, with the benefit being that it will align with your license date. So it's just one date that you have to remember. The second being that will have all your saved applications. So you can just go in and update it every 2 years. You won't have to upload all of that documentation again. You'll have to change anything that's been updated, but you won't be starting from scratch every other year, like you were with Quality for Me.
Okay. So really it's people have to put in that first push of time to fill out the application when they first start. But then after that, it should be much less time to fill it out and update it every 2 years.
I would say so. Programs who put out a brand new program handbook, for example, will have to re-upload their parent handbook when those revisions are made. But if you say, I am still using the same policy addressing suspension and expulsion, that's a requirement at one of the higher stars. You don't have to upload that again. You can just keep using that until you change it.
So, how can educators best prepare for the switch as we approach the end of the grace period, and in the next couple years, more people their licenses will expire and they'll join Rising Stars? How can they best prepare for that transition?
Sure. I would say the very first thing to do, which should be easy because I'm sure all of your listeners read Shortcuts, Maine Roads to Quality's weekly e-newsletter. So in that newsletter for the past couple months, we've been putting out what we call a Rising Stars for Me tip of the week. So those are hot button questions, things that we're hearing from the field a lot. We ask the question, then we provide some guidance, some answers, some resources. So that's going to give you new information every week to just take in small bites. And I know Maine AOIC has a great archive of all of those tip of the weeks on their website. That's super helpful. We're also building one on our website so folks can access those. So that's just like a small bite. Everybody can do that once a week because we're all already reading Shortcuts. Phoebe does an amazing job. You can check out the OCFS website with all of the resources that we've uploaded to support folks with Rising Stars for Me. The easiest way to get there is really to go to the risingstarsforme.org page, which is the start of the application. But right on that homepage is a link to all the resources on OCFS. So at your leisure, just take a look at that. I would say for program directors, owners, administrators, another great thing to do is to get into the registry and go through your staff list. Make sure that it is accurate. Make sure that all of your staff, if you have staff, make sure that all of their registry information is up to date. So, like if they've taken a college course, make sure that they've uploaded that to the registry. And you're also going to want to make sure, as the administrator, that you have director of record access. So definitely go on the Maine Roads to Quality, mrtq.org, to the registry section. That will give you information about how to set that up. It's very easy. You can just do it online now, but that gives you access to the Rising Stars for Me application. When you go into the application, you use your Maine Roads to Quality registry login for you personally. Then you also have to have a license number so we know what program's application to pull for you. And the benefit of having director of record access also for, let's say, a larger program with maybe two directors of access or a director of record access and an assistant, you can both work on the application. So you can log in, use that license number, and you'll be able to pick up where your coworker left off and vice versa. Yeah, I think those would, for like minimal lift, like things that, especially the registry, that's a thing that folks I think are doing regularly anyway, especially when we think about what's coming up with a supplemental salary program, that administrators and directors really keep that registry staff list crisp and clean and up to date. So you're doing that anyway, and you'll have it done for Rising Stars for Me.
So, MRTQ is kind of in charge of ensuring quality in programs. And so, or that's my understanding, anyways, right now. And so, I'm wondering what is the difference between what OCFS is doing for Rising Stars and what MRTQ is doing for Rising Stars?
Sure. Yeah, that's a very important distinction. In that Rising Stars for me is really a partnership between MRTQ-PDN and OCFS, so Maine Roads to Quality Professional Development Network, and the Office of Child and Family Services at Maine's Department of Health and Human Services. You're right in that what Maine Roads to Quality is doing is supporting programs to demonstrate program quality, to improve program quality, to get the training that their staff might need, to get advice on how to do, say, professional development planning. We have resources for every one of the standards. There's a great PowerPoint full of resources on that OCFS website, so that's one main feature of what we do. Another feature is that we are doing kind of the technical behind the scenes pieces of the application. So if a program runs into a bug with the application, or, oh, I can't log in, or, oh, I'm logging in and like this piece is confusing me, that is something that Maine Roads to Quality also is handling. So folks can contact me with questions about that. As far as OCFS, they are doing the decisions regarding star ratings. So when you submit an application, it's Amber Tarasi at OCFS who is looking at your submission and issuing your certificate. If you had a question about what your rating was, or if you wanted to ask that it be reviewed, OCFS would do that. OCFS is going to be doing the on site monitoring visits. So they'll be going out and doing spot checks on the portfolios and interviewing programs and just, taking a look at all the great things that programs are doing. That's another one of their responsibilities. And then also, they certainly have the child care subsidy program. So those incentives that we were talking about, that is something that comes from OCFS as well.
Okay. So, in terms of what the educator or the director will experience, you guys are the ones to go to with questions about the application and that process. And then OCFS will be kind of like the deciding body on what the star rating is, and they will come to the site to visit the program.
Right, right. So it's and we are constantly emailing back and forth. Like there are many, many, many emails a day I get that are copied between Amber and myself. So certainly don't worry if you like reach out to the quote unquote wrong person. We will get the question to where it needs to be. But just as a general, Maine Roads to Quality is like the supporting quality supports training piece, and OCFS is doing monitoring and the actual rating.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really helpful distinction. I think there are educators who are confused about how all of the different organizations mix and what their
Yes.
roles are.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Is there any misinformation about Rising Stars that you want to address?
Um, yes, there are two that I hear pretty regularly that I just want to speak to really quickly. One we kind of already talked about, and that's regarding the expiration dates. So when we get to the end of the grace period in September, I've had folks be like, "Oh, I got to fill out that application before the end of September." That's only if you had an expiration date between March 27th and September 29th. So if you would have been like one of those first people in the first few months, if your expiration date was April 1st, you got a grace period to the end of September. And those folks will need to do the application. If you look at your certificate and it says, my expiration date is June 30th, 2024, you don't have to do anything at the end of September. You need to complete the application by the end of June 2024. Of course, the like asterisk to that is you can do it anytime you want. Like we certainly want folks to do the application if they're curious, if they're interested, if they think they could get an incentive by filling out the application. Absolutely do that. But I don't. The whole field does not need to feel the pressure that they have to complete that application at the end of September. Most people will have time, additional time. And then the other misconception that I hear most frequently that like seems to have people the most nervous is around staffing, right? And I just want to say, of course, up front, we know what an issue staffing is. We know how what a significant barrier staff turnover is. We understand that, but I want people to understand when I hear things like, "Well, I'll never get to a star 4 or a star 5 because I'll have to have half my staff with a bachelor's degree." And that is not the case. You will be able to operate a Star 5 program if not a single person on your staff has a bachelor's degree. What we're looking for at the highest star rating, so a Star 5, Star 4, and Star 5, is that for, and I'm talking about facilities here. Sorry, I should have stipulated that for facilities. At those highest stars, we're looking for 50% of your regular staff. So those would be classroom teachers, assistant teachers, program directors, ed techs, not your bus driver, not the administrative specialist who works in the office. 50% of those that teaching staff to have a level 5 on the Maine Roads to Quality Direct Care Career Lattice, and you can achieve that with experience and a Maine credential, or a combination of college credits. So you don't need to have a bachelor's degree to get to a level 5 on the career lattice. You certainly can use a bachelor's, but it's not required. So for folks who are like, oh, I have these great staff, but they don't have a degree, and it's just, it would be too much of a burden. It's a huge barrier for them to go back to school and get a degree. They don't have to. We have incentives around earning a Maine credential. We have supports. You folks at Maine AEYC have the Teach program. Like, there are supports and incentives out there to help folks move along up the career lattice. We can definitely help you put a plan together for that to happen. But I just want folks to know that we are not looking to have a state full of programs with bachelor's level teachers. That is not the goal of Rising Stars for me at this point in time, or for very many years. We know how hard it is. We know how hard it is.
Yeah, I think that's really good to hear, because I know that's a concern in the field. Yeah, and so for people who maybe aren't familiar who are listening, though I think most people will be, Maine Roads to Quality Professional Development Network has career lattices for educators and then also for directors and administrators and probably some other things. And so that is like just a way to keep track of your experience in your education. So if you have 10 years of experience, you might be at a level, 4. I don't actually know what the levels are. So this is not a fact, but you might be at whatever level on the career lattice. But the more education you have, the higher you are on the career lattice as well. So it's like a combination of education and experience that moves you up the career lattice. And so then that is relates to Rising Stars and the rating of a program, because we want people with more experience and more education at the higher program levels.
Yes.
Yep. Is that right?
Yeah. When we think about it, very generally like that, the career lattice has been in place for like almost 25 years now, as the place where folks can upload their educational training and experience. We keep track of that for you. And we also help support you if you, like, say you are fairly new to the field. You took 1 or 2 college classes, or maybe a few Maine Roads to Quality core knowledge trainings related to a credential, and you're like, well, I'd really love to get to a level 5, and that would help my program. That would help me. There are incentives for me to do that. We can help you put together a professional development plan to make that happen. We have a credential coordinator who would be more than happy to talk to you about that. So yes, that is how those two things are related. Like, level on the career lattice impacts that professional development and staffing standard area on Rising Stars for me.
I guess I have one more question, which is the way I've looked at the Rising Star system, which I'm not working in a program right now, I'm working at Maine AUIC, so it doesn't impact me directly right now. But looking at it, it seems like you can reach a level 5 in one category, but maybe you're not at a level 5 in a different category. Like maybe you're at a level 5 with staffing, but you're not at a level 5 with the health and nutrition piece, right? And so I'm curious if you know, and you might not know the answer, but if you're really strong in one area and not as strong in a different area, how does like your rating get determined?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our state is what is called a block rating system. So that means that in order your rating, your overall program's rating is based on the lowest score that you get in the standard areas, which is not. I mean, it doesn't sound great, right? Like, but nationally, that is what a lot of states work off. So what we've tried to do with this new system is just exactly what you said, is to recognize programs that are meeting higher ratings by different standard area. So when you go in, you'll do your application. At the end, you'll get a page of recommendations of here are the things that you can do to reach the next rating up, and then you go to your profile page that gives you your final rating. And what you're going to see is a block um, that lists out your rating in each of the standards. So you're going to be able to see right on the right hand side, oh, I got a star, 4 stars in learning environment. I got 4 stars in program evaluation. I got 4 stars in family engagement. I only got 2 stars in professional development because we're having some turnover right now and we need to get some staff caught up on training. But you're going to see 4, 4, 4, 2. And then at the very bottom, it does say a star 2 is your overall rating. But we very much want to highlight what programs are doing well. As we move forward and get more programs into the system with ratings, we'll be translating those visual star kind of, they're, I hate to use the word report card, but that's kind of what they look like. Those will appear on childcare choices. So when a family clicks on a program, they'll be able to see, okay, so this program is overall rated 3 stars, but look at this. Look at all the 4 stars that they got. We're really invested in seeing that they have 4 stars in family engagement. And that's important to us. So it's just the overall rating, yes, is one thing, but we want to make sure that the programs are celebrated for the things that they're doing well, and not just that they can see it, but that we're celebrating it as well. And one other thing I just want to point out is that our system is built upon the standards for the national accrediting bodies. So, NAUIC, the National Association for Family Child Care, Head Start, and the American Montessori Society, and also the Council on Accreditation. So we based the progression of our requirements on those accrediting bodies. So to get to a star 5, you do have to have national accreditation. Um, so that's so once you do that, you get to a star 5, and then nationally accredited programs also have fewer pieces to fill out on the application. We recognize how much work it is to get nationally accredited, how much paperwork there is. So we've streamlined the Rising Stars for Me application for those programs so there are only a few questions that they have to answer.
Okay. And so, like, if someone's not nationally accredited right now, the progression to get nationally accredited mirrors closely the progression on the Rising Stars. So it's not like you're having to do double work.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time so much to chat with me. And is there anything else you want to share about Rising Stars before you go?
Uh, no, I just thank you so much for having me. I could talk about Rising Stars for me all day. But of course, if anybody has questions, like if anything is still unclear, myself, partners at OCFS, our district coordinators here at MRTQ PDN, we are all more than happy to talk, to answer questions, to hear your concerns, to share resources, anything that you need, we are here. So please reach out to us.
Amazing. And I will put in the podcast notes the email for you and for MRTQ. That way people know how to
Perfect.
get there
Yep.
if they need it.
Perfect.
Did you know that we secured $60 million in funds this past spring for childcare in Maine? This historic investment is improving the system for providers, educators, and families alike, attempting to make childcare more affordable and accessible, and increasing wages for early childhood educators. But we didn't accomplish this tremendous goal easily. It took a huge coalition of people to advocate for effective policy and change. And if you're ready to join efforts like this and be an advocate for early childhood education on a state and federal level, then you should apply for Maine AYC's LEAP program. LEAP stands for Leadership in Early Childhood Advocacy and Policy. This is a year-long cohort program for educators, parents, and community members across the state of Maine to learn best practices and strategies in speaking about the most pressing, critical early childhood issues. The program includes opportunities to participate in activities and trainings, speak with administrators and elected officials, and organize with other educators, parents, and community members. If you're interested in becoming a better advocate and joining a coalition of ECE changemakers, you can find more information and the 2024 cohort application at maineayc.org/leap. That's maineayc.org/LEAP. The 2024 cohort application deadline is approaching November 17th, so apply today at maineayc.org/leap.
So I am joined now by Laura Larson, who is the Executive Director of Family Focus, a childcare program in Brunswick, Maine.
So, hi, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Laura, as a childcare provider in Maine, what is your perspective on the new Rising Stars system?
Rising Stars isn't exactly a new concept for us because we've been doing the quality steps before. So I think everybody that has been doing the quality steps before is all about quality. You know, we all understand the importance of quality. We get the quality. I think the biggest issue most providers and that we're struggling with ourselves is the timing of the change after the pandemic, you know, post-pandemic workforce issues, requiring more from our workforce without any kind of additional compensations or anything. So I think that's been the biggest struggle. It's not that we don't want to do quality. I think it's been much more around the timing of it. And then some of the things that we're implementing was something that we were talking about in 2017 or 2018. And now post-pandemic, those things are almost completely different now. It's amazing what the pandemic did to the childcare field. And those are not necessarily even our biggest issues anymore. But I do think that there needs to be some investment if you're going to encourage providers to move up that career ladder.
So I heard you mention the career lattices, which I
Yes.
did talk about with Jen Wiles as well. Is that kind of where you feel like the biggest struggle is that staffing piece in the new Rising Star system?
Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, we stayed open. And because of that, we were able to keep the majority of our workforce, but a lot of them didn't. And some of those people had to go get other jobs. I mean, you can't just not have a job. And then as the post-pandemic is now occurring, there are so many more workforce options. Women in general are, fill 98% or more of the childcare workforce. We're a female dominated workforce.
Fact check. All right, so the childcare industry is undoubtedly a female-dominated workforce. That percentage that Laura quoted is up for debate. Just a quick Google search shows that the number of women that are working in childcare is anywhere from 87% to 97%, depending on where you are in the country, who did the survey, all of that sort of stuff. So it is definitely female dominated, but we don't have reliable data to show how much is female versus male in the workforce here in early childhood in Maine. Now back to the show.
And there are just a lot more options out there. And we also struggle with our own family responsibilities. So we may be taking care of other people's children, but we still have our own. Majority of us are still doing the lion's share part of the work for our own families. So if the kids are sick, or it's a snow day, or things like that happen, or the pandemic hits and these kids don't go back to school, somebody's staying home. In general, the majority of that were women were staying home when their kids weren't going back to school, or they don't have childcare needs. Now, that's not to say that we don't have a lot more dads doing a lot more than they ever did 20 years ago. I would say I've got 50% of men and women picking up and dropping off and taking responsibility. So that has been a lot bigger recently. But the career lattice, it is so difficult to get people to invest in their education with no financial support.
Yeah. So it seems like, I mean, all of the issues you're talking about are just like inherent to the childcare system across the country
They were
and in
there
Maine.
beforehand, and they just escalated with the pandemic because now everybody's competing for that workforce. We weren't competing so much with workforce people too much. But now, I mean, McDonald's and Burger King are, advertising $18, $19 an hour because they need workers. And then all they have to do is increase the price of a Big Mac, a hamburger, a Whopper, whatever they need to do. You might see a 10-cent raise. You might see maybe a 50-cent raise. But in childcare, it's like $20, $30 a week, to increase to make up for those salaries. 80% of our childcare budgets all go to just salaries. But the plowing and the maintenance costs are going up. Food's going up. Electricity, water, everything is going up. And so parents, just to absorb that is our basic increase. But once you start talking about increasing salaries, an extra $1 an hour or an extra $2 an hour, that's a significant increase to parents to try and burden that between the 40 kids that might be in that program to support that kind of wage across 12 providers.
Right. So there's just like all of these societal, bigger system issues that we're experiencing that bear down on the childcare industry, which makes it hard to staff in general. And then it makes it hard to get staff who have the kind of education and experience levels needed to move up the career lattice in Maine, which is how they measure the rising stars staffing. Right. Okay.
So yeah. I do think the rising stars, I mean, quality is expensive anyway. If you're going to do something at a certain quality level, it doesn't have to all be tied to funds, but you have to pay for that staffing. And I do think as far as the rising stars, the majority around the challenge that providers are having is around the educational piece, hitting those requirements, people having 4 years, 2-year degrees, certifications, continuing their training, getting the MELDS, which is the Maine Early Learning Development Standards training that's required, getting all of those things to get the teachers to do it after their 40-hour shift. And we aren't capable, back in the day, I would have my staff take, okay, you got a 2-hour class today. Okay, so leave early this day or that day. I don't have enough staff to cover the shifts already. I've already shrunk my hours down in my programs to cover those shifts. So the other thing people aren't understanding is that these things are all starting to affect all the other economies. We are the economy that supports every other economy. And the childcare economy is taking such a hit that it's now rippling out. And that's now where businesses are like, hey, what's going on in childcare? People are starting to ask. Businesses are asking. I actually had a local business call me and ask me, this person actually knew me personally in the community, and called and said, hey, I heard a rumor. One of my workers says they can't come to work on Fridays because you guys aren't open on Fridays anymore. Is that actually true? Like, he was really amazed. And when I explained to him, yeah. And so he had to figure this out for his worker because his worker couldn't come to work on Friday. So for about 3 or 4 months last year, we were only open Monday through Thursday because I didn't have enough work staff to cover breaks and to cover everything. We ended up shutting down classrooms to fix it. And then the state has stepped in and they're going to add the quality bumps are based off where you are on the quality rising stars. So, for example, if you take subsidy like us, subsidy is 75% of the market rate. It's not going to pay for the true cost of care for that low income family that needs to use a subsidy, right? So up until now, we've taken them, and you get a quality bump that might help you a little bit with getting that price back up to what you need to actually truly charge or what your private rights might be. If they're going to attach the quality bumps to the rising stars, I could be a level 5, and now all of a sudden, if I don't have the staffing requirements to make that level anymore because they've changed it, now I'm a level 3, and now I'm getting less of a quality bump. So now I'm getting even less for that subsidy child. And now we're going to either have to start limiting how many subsidies we can take, or people aren't going to take subsidies because it doesn't make any business sense.
Yeah. So that reimbursement rate, you get more of a reimbursement for a student coming in on subsidy, the higher your star
Right.
rating is.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then that leaves the private pay families to help. The private pay families are now paying more to help support the infant toddler programs and the subsidy families. So we've been doing it all these years, either by paying our staff less so we can keep the fees low and they're affordable for families, or we have to pay more and raise the fees so that some of childcare is becoming unaffordable. Quality is becoming unaffordable for some workers and families. I guess I worry that we're leaving a lot of underserved people out there who are making more difficult decisions now, which is, okay, it's not like I'm even giving up half my salary. I'm giving up too much of my salary to make it justify working, which then affects the rest of the environment, the workforce, because look at the jobs we have open, right? We've got so many jobs that aren't being filled because there's nobody out there to work it because it doesn't make sense to pay for it with childcare. It's getting a little difficult for providers to keep those subsidies and to be able to justify doing the subsidies if we're not going to get paid properly for the subsidies. And then the private pay families are struggling to keep that. So we've been doing it on the back of our workers, and we've been doing it on the back of parents. And now it's time that either we need to increase or include businesses in this solution, local businesses, and we need to include the government in this solution. It's not something we've been doing it all these years between just parents and providers. We've worked it out. We'll take less, you pay a little less. Okay, you give us a little more, we'll take a little more. But it's always been on the back of the workers or the back of the parents. And that can't happen anymore. But the government is starting to take notice. It just takes a very long time to get things done. I know businesses are starting to step in. I mean, we're seeing it all over the news. There are businesses that are now trying to step in and figure this out. But opening more childcare centers isn't necessarily the answer because we still haven't fixed the workforce issue.
Yeah. So it's this huge ecosystem of things that need to be improved to make sure that the system works. So there's wages for early childhood educators and benefits, which largely don't exist in the childcare field. And then there's also the eligibility and for subsidy for families, as well as the subsidy reimbursement for providers and centers, and all of these different pieces so that people can go to work and not, go bankrupt trying to pay for childcare.
But the other struggle that we have in this field is because it's such a low wage field, and it's also a service industry, that a lot of my workers also are on subsidies. So to work a full-time job and still need housing assistance and still need childcare assistance and still need SNAP and food and Maine care, I think that's really sad to think that you can work a full-time job and you still can't make enough money to support yourself or your family.
Mm. And so just to connect this back to the Rising Stars topic, in the Rising Stars, no, I love talking about it. Don't apologize. But in the Rising Stars system, one of the metrics is staffing, which is based on a combination of experience and education. Right. So in order to get to that level 5, you need to have a lot of experience and or a lot of education. And that's hard to do when the field is so tough to work in for so many reasons. And so because you can't get to level 5 in the staffing metric, your overall score couldn't be level 5 ever, which impacts your quality bump for subsidy reimbursement, which then makes it more expensive for families if you have to charge more to take subsidy kids, and all of those ripple effects of that one metric.
Correct. And I do think that that's one of the challenges. And it also, the state hasn't fixed the taxing situation either. So if you are a level 5 provider, your families get the double tax credit because they get the certificate for a quality program. But any other lower level of quality, the families lose that.
Yeah, there are so many ripple effects from that one metric, it seems like.
Yeah.
Besides that one metric, are there any other kind of major changes between the former quality rating and improvement system and the new Rising Stars system?
The one thing that I think is a benefit to the timing of the Rising Stars was the fact that it came out when the stipends came out.
Jargon alert!
So Laura just said stipends, and I'm sure you know what a stipend is in general, but in case you don't know what it means in this particular conversation, childcare workers across the state of Maine have been getting a $200 stipend every month from the state government through the pandemic. In the latest legislative session, they passed a bill that actually increases and extends the stipend program as a long-term solution to the staffing issues that the childcare industry is experiencing in Maine. So the stipends are actually going to increase in the coming months, but that is what Laura is referring to when she says stipends.
The fact that it came out when the stipends came out, so that there are more providers that are now there are more of us on the program. There's more of us that we know where they're at. There's a few more resources being offered. We know what size people are, and it's not like we need to be tracking that, but it's very beneficial for us to know how many licensed providers do we have. That's not a number that's always been easy to tell, so that we know where are all the children being served, what's making the most sense, because there needs to be multiple fits, multiple families, multiple ways of getting care. We're not saying that, level 5 care is the only good quality care, because we know that you can be a level 3 and still provide very good quality. You just might not have the education. So I think that's the part that people are feeling very judged about with it. Is it because I've got people, you hear them talking, I've been doing this for 23 years and they're telling me I'm not quality because I didn't go and get a 4-year degree, but I've been doing it for 23 years. I've been doing this. I've got a wait list. I got families that are just dedicated to me. And they're doing beautiful job in raising and helping raise children when their families are working. So I have a hard time sometimes making it feel like that is the end all and be all of the quality piece. I just think there needs to be some other flexible pathways maybe to help some of those providers. So the other thing I would like to see us pushing a lot more and maybe getting some more programs up is the CDA. It's a Child Development Associates, and that can just be done by trainings. And then your years of experience can move you up to that. But you can't get any higher than a 5 on it. So that would be as high as you can get with that certificate or an infant toddler credential. But yes, they do have a couple of good pathways. I just don't think we've invested enough as a state to help put maybe some more programs together to get these CDAs. We're doing it with the apprenticeship program through the MRTQ. So Lori Moses is running that now. So they took 10, which is great, but it's a much bigger problem to get people to get those degrees so that we can get them back out into the field and working with some of the home providers and centers and before and after school programs. But the training is definitely one that needs to be looked at. And that's, and it takes time to do that. I don't have the absolute solution to this issue. I just know that there's just more talk that has to happen, and there needs to be more investment, and there needs to be more support.
Yeah. So the question becomes, based on research and state mandates, we've decided training and education lead to quality. I don't think that's very controversial, but it's hard to get training and education for a whole bunch of systemic reasons in this society.
Yes. Yeah.
So now that we've decided this is the quality metric, how are we going to support teachers and programs and directors and owners in achieving that goal of quality?
Yeah, I would have liked to see Quality Stars come out with a pathway plan. But how are we going to get people trained in these programs? And what can you come in and do with the people that have already been doing it for the last 23 years? How do you step in and say to them, now you need to go back after 23 years and prove that your quality and prove that you've been doing all the right things all these years? without having to go take all these classes and have to take all these trainings. Is there a different pathway for some of them? And then maybe change it for everybody new coming in, right? So new people coming in, this is the way it is. But the people that have been here all this time, is there another pathway for them? Is it just a portfolio class where you just have to get together, provide a portfolio, show your expertise, and show your ability to plan curriculum, and show your ability to do observations and stuff and record keep? As long as you're doing it and you know how to do it, why does the fact that you had to take class mean that you can do it better, or that you can't learn on your own? 23 years, I guarantee they've learned it if they're doing those things. If they haven't, that's fine. Then now the classes are available to you, and now you can learn how to do a parent conference or something like that. But after 23 years, I guarantee a lot of them have figured out how to talk with families and how to do that, or they wouldn't still be in this field.
Right. And that's why I think we offer the Teach Scholarship program, right?
Yes.
Which we're expanding right now, and we have 50 new slots, which is amazing. And I think
Yes.
that's funded in part by the state, by OCFS. So that's like a really great investment they're making to help support teachers getting their 2-year degree at minimum while they're working still, so they can get those years of experience and their degree at the same time, which is lovely. But it's not enough to support the entire field right now.
Right. I do think it's an excellent start. And I think it's so well needed, especially for the people who've decided this is going to be their career. Maybe they've just been in the field for 4 years or something, right? That's perfect. Hey, look, now there's money. You can't use that fact that it costs too much to go back to school, right? So now you can go back to school and get your degree, and you won't have to come out owing loans. You won't have to do any of that stuff. And you can do it at a different pace. That's great. The only problem is I have my 23-year-old veterans who are like, I don't want to go back to college now. I can't even do the noodle or the doodle and the platforms. And they get so stressed about the online. I mean, they have a hard enough time just focusing on Zoom. You saw me just a few minutes ago, to even get into these technology things. So it would be neat to kind of sit down and really come up with some really true quality pathways, and really talk about them with the providers that have either used them or are interested in them, but also get some views from some of the older. There's got to be some grandfather clauses we could do for some of the people who have been here for so much longer. No system is ever going to be perfect, but I think talking about them and just making sure that we're at least hearing people and seeing what we can do to resolve some of those waves that happen when we make decisions. I don't have a solution for it, but I do know that, we just have to figure out how we maybe minimize it a little bit. But it doesn't mean that we can't go forward with the system they've created.
Maine AEYC is coming up on our 20th year of existence. 2024 will be our 20th anniversary year. And in celebration, we are going to have several events, as well as several celebrations of our past and our future. One of those celebrations is going to be to honor 20 young teachers to watch. If you know a childcare educator who works with children birth through grade 3 in the state of Maine, you can nominate them to be considered as one of our 20 young teachers to watch. They have to be between the ages of 20 and 30 and have worked in the childcare field for at least 2 years. Nominate them today at Linktree/Maine AEYC. That's linktr.ee/MAINEAEYC. On our Linktree, you'll find the button to nominate a young teacher to watch. The nomination deadline is October 31st, so don't wait and get in your nomination today. If you know a great young teacher, we want to know about them and celebrate them as the future of the early childhood field in Maine. Our last guest this episode is Megan Carrasco, who is the founder and executive director of Seedlings to Sunflowers, which is a childcare program located in Gorham, Maine. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you.
As a childcare provider in Maine, what is your perspective right now on the new Rising Stars system?
The Rising Stars system, I think, has been launched to help support us with quality care for sure. And I knew that they needed to start with a punting point from somewhere. I do feel like it's a really tough time for providers to be receiving any different nuances in quality care because of rolling out of a global pandemic and having staffing shortages and that sort of stuff. So we went through the application fine. We are eager to get to the next star level, so we are going to be making those steps. Once a group of directors got in touch with OCFS and were able to discuss changing some of the Rising Stars protocols, amend some of the expectations. We were put in touch with people who were able to help us walk us through that in a more seamless way. But I am worried that there is a lack of equity across the board.
Can you say more about why you think the system might lack equity?
I believe that the people who have the ability to step outside of the classroom and outside of their roles and advocate for this field are the only ones who are given support right now. And I do know that this field is struggling in a lot of ways, and that directors and owners are being pulled into classrooms and don't have the time and wherewithal to tackle this in a meaningful way. And I do think that there should be more state support if we're going to fully roll this out. That being said, I know we have to start somewhere. And I am a huge proponent for when you launch a program, it's going to be bumpy and we need people to help us work through the kinks. But I don't think that was necessarily thought about how this field is struggling. And there's going to be a whole spectrum of people who are going to be capable of who are offering quality, but are not going to be able to prove it because they don't have the time. I do think that this new system has given people an opportunity to step up in quality when they are offering it. I do think that the struggle right now across the board seems to be the employment situation and being able to meet those standards. And so I think that programs are really struggling with meeting that quality standard where they're able to have staff that are meeting the expectations and the education that is needed to rise up in the Rising Stars. I just think that any change in this kind of thing right now seems overwhelming to people. Once I was able to connect with somebody through OCFS who was able to walk me through that, we were actually able to pretty easily meet the next step up, the next level of stars for our own program. It made it easier for me, but I just feel like people don't have the wherewithal to wrap their heads around it.
Yeah, and like you said, the time, because if they're working all day in the classroom and then OCFS isn't available at 7:00 at night when,
right.
when the provider might have time, it's hard to connect and get that reassurance about the system.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are these changes impacting your program and operations?
We are already doing all the things, so I'm not really worried about proving it. It's going to be to make sure that all of our paperwork and everything is locked and loaded, and make sure that we have all the things in place to prove that we're doing each step.
And you said the staffing metric, that part of the Rising Star system is the hardest one that you think, or to prove or to show or to get to.
People are leaving this field, and I think just as a state we need to focus on, and I think that the state of Maine is trying to support the employment in this field through the wage supports and that sort of stuff, but to expect teachers who have been in the field for a really long time to go back to school and get their degree to rise up to level 5 or higher as you get up in the stars, there's expectations around education that I feel like are unreasonable if we've been taking the trainings along the way, which is, a lot more hours of training than even social workers or people in different fields need to take per year. So I just am looking to bridge the gap between the educational expectations and the MRTQ system. That's like my interest, so that maybe you don't have a formalized degree, but there is a road or a roadmap or pavement to something that's can prove that the teachers are offering quality education.
Yeah, I was talking to Jen Wiles from MRTQ, and it seems like the Star 5 standard for staffing is that
50% of your staff are level 5 or higher on the MRTQ career lattice. And so I looked up what the level 5 is. And you don't need a degree, but you do need, if you don't have a degree, you need your CDA and 6 years of experience. Which is a lot of experience when you think about how much someone has to invest into an employee to move up to that star 5, right? If you have to have all your employees there for at least 6 years before you can get to star 5, that's a long-term commitment just to move up a star level.
Yeah, and my worry is that we need people in all areas of the field, and we need people in the field in general. And my worry is that it's going to hold employers back from hiring people fresh out of school or just turning 18 and wanting to get into the field in some capacity. And if there's not a quicker roadmap or an ability to get them to a place, and I mean, we will have to make a decision about whether we're going to forego our quality rating or hire a young staff who might be the next best thing in the field. And we would want to make sure that we're supporting people working their way up. I also think that there's a lot of anxiety for people around such a quick turnaround of the release of the Rising Star system, and then needing to submit by, like, we had to submit by September. What quelled me is that we could submit our application at our current rating with no needed documentation, and then if we want to step up to the next one is where we'll need to submit everything online. So that was helpful, but again, I have the ability and time and wherewithal to connect with somebody to help me walk me through all that stuff.
Also, you spoke about like the issues with like the older staff who have been in the field for a long time, and they've taken trainings throughout all those years, but now they are expected to get their CDA or to get a degree. And so what do you think would be a solution to that sort of issue?
I just think if we're going to have a formalized, I really love the courses through MRTQ. We've actually foregone one of our in-person in-service days to have everyone take something through MRTQ annually, whether it's a MELDS or, inclusion training or leadership for our older, our leadership, directors and administrative staff here. But I do, I feel like we do all this training and it doesn't seem to like get us anywhere. Not get us anywhere, but we do all this training. Like, say we have people come into our program and do a training on sexual harassment or diversity, equity, inclusion. It doesn't really map out the way it would through MRTQ and I'm hoping that we can have a discussion more openly about what really gets us to the 30 hours, what is meaningful enough to get us to a higher level on the MRTQ career lattice, and what do we need to prove, so that there could be some sort of, we don't always have to go through MRTQ to map out our educational pathway.
Yeah, that there are other resources.
Yeah.
So those are kind of some of the struggles as we're switching systems. What do you think, or how do you think the childcare system in Maine will benefit from the change in systems?
Well, I think it puts every licensed childcare center on the roadmap to quality, which feels good. I do obviously, and I think I can speak for most everyone in the state, want there to be a measure for quality, because it's, we go into this field wanting to support children and families, and we don't want to just slap together a nonsensical program just for the sake of it. It's, I think that's definitely, we need a system like this. I also believe that it's got to be kind of stumbly and clunky for a little bit, and we need to speak up when it's feeling like something's more cumbersome or not working, and also give praise to when it is working and when there's support, because I know it's as I do advocacy work at the state level, I know as somebody on the ground, it can be hard to bridge that gap between the people who are actually working on the day-to-day to reach quality or to advocate for different things within the field, and that the state can only do what they can do on a certain timeline. So I am empathetic to everyone's place in the field, but I just hope that there can continue to be an open dialogue between directors and the people who can speak up. And then if we're speaking up, making sure that we're taking into consideration everyone's voices. But yeah, I'm very supportive of a quality rating system all around. Just wanting to, I feel for everyone. This field is struggling on a national level. We're losing, 4,000 childcare centers over this next year. They're expecting over the across the United States. And it just feels like a hard time for people to even wrap their heads around, even if the change was even if the changes are or were so minor, to even shift gears right now, because people are just so overwhelmed with maintaining what they already have going on. So
yeah, and just all of the other things going on in society,
yeah.
The pandemic, burning everyone out, in general, and so yeah, it's really hard to take on something new when you're just kind of recovering.
Yes, totally.
If you're even recovering yet.
Right.
What do you think is most important for other program directors or owners in Maine to know about Rising Stars?
I think if you can set aside time to connect with somebody to discuss your Rising Stars status and where you can or need to go from there, then it would be really helpful. It quelled so many of my concerns or overwhelm. I felt like I was like putting it off, and it just dabbling in it and starting to upload stuff. And when I finally talked to somebody, they were like, you're easily at the next star level. And so that was really helpful. I think speak up if things aren't working and connect with people who also feel the same way, because it's going to be power in our voices down on the ground level, speaking up to the state to move things and find a better pathway. And I think if you can get involved with the collaborative meetings that are happening with OCFS and MRTQ to get on board, if you're able to. I think everyone's doing the best they can, and I hope that we can all figure out a pathway forward that makes sense for everyone, or nuances for the different varying spectrum of different centers and options that are offered in the state. I'm always along for the ride and speak up usually when I feel like things aren't right. So I just hope that everyone can jump on board in that way as well.
Yeah, I really get that sense from you that it's like about collaboration and just and fine tuning. Like you said, nothing's perfect from the get-go.
No.
Nothing
you're going to leave somebody ever. You're always going to, when you start programs like this, you're going to leave somebody out. And unless we say something, we're not going to know who that is and what that feels like. Yeah, I know that everyone's doing the best they can and with what they have. So
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, like, collaborative, empathetic attitude towards it.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of controversy.
I know. I mean, I think those meetings are intense, as they should be. And I so appreciate the people speaking up. And I appreciate OCFS listening and us trying to figure out, everyone has the different ideas and what makes the most sense. But we really need to keep engaged in the conversation if we're going to make it better. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, those are all the questions I have. So
awesome. Well, this was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This episode was a bit longer than our upcoming episodes will be, since QRIS is such a large topic in the field right now. So if you've listened this far, we appreciate you. Our next episode will be released in 2 weeks and will focus on the Teach Scholarship Program. We hope you'll listen in then. This podcast is a production of the Maine Association for the Education of Young Children. You can learn more about us and the podcast at our website, maineaeyc.org. That's maineaeyc.org. This podcast has been created, produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kaylina Mills. Until next time.